let's get real. Welcome to TBC Today. This podcast features friends in and around the Triad Baptist Church community. Hear encouraging real-life stories from our weekly guests and inspiring insights from our host, Pastor Rob. To learn more about Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina, visit us online at tbcnow.org.
Well, spring is in the air, and we are excited to have our guest with us this week. We have Amy Grochowski. Now, last week a couple weeks ago, we talked to her husband, David, and so we're going to talk to Amy about some of the same things we talked to David about, but also we've got some new information, some new things we want to talk about. You grew up in Melbourne, Australia?
That's right.
Wow. And her parents were church planners. How long did you live there?
About 8 years. I was 12 when we came back.
Okay. And so then she was a nurse for about 20 years and is an author, a published author now. That's one of the things that we want to talk about in a few minutes. So, Pastor Rob, are you ready to get real?
Ready to get real.
Let's do it.
We're going to start the sands of time here.
Okay.
That'll keep us on track. It's about a 30-minute timer, so you get a feel for what we're doing and what you want to emphasize. Hey, it's great to have you here today. We're so glad to have you. We got kind of two different perspectives, but one of was your story writing, but also some other things going on in your life too, and we'll kind of see how things go here. But why don't you tell us a little bit about how you were raised, why Melbourne, and you chose that to be born?
I chose that to be born. I didn't really choose to be born. It just happened, but no. My parents were missionaries to Australia, and so I think I was 5 when we first moved to Australia. So it was my childhood, really, that was in Australia, and so Melbourne is, down on the southern tip of eastern Australia, and I was a little Aussie for a while. I don't sound like it now, but I used to.
And what was it like to grow up in Australia? Is it everything you imagine, the kangaroos and all those kind of things, and the wide prairies, or was it?
Well, we lived in the city.
Okay.
So, but our church camp, Camp Murrindindi at the time, I think that's since moved, but was out pretty close to the bush. So we got some experiences out there, and then we used to go on holiday to some of the sheep farms or ranches, or that's not what they call it, but anyway, which, or not total bush like desert, but there are less people, more wide expanses, different weather, different.
We were actually talking about the weather before we started recording this. So that's pretty interesting. What did you say about in the winter everything is green?
Yeah, so in the winter everything's green. It might be rainy like it is today here, but it's green. It's brown in the summertime when it's
so
dry
funny to
and
think
hot.
about.
So
How did Australia paint part of your life to brought you where you are today? Like, how do you see that as playing into that? I asked that because you're a writer, okay? You like to write, and you've been through a lot of experiences, and I wondered, did you look across the fields and become very reflective, or what did you do?
I would think maybe it's affected me in that my story changed so much and so dramatically. So, my early childhood was in North Carolina, in Davie County, and then early as in before 5 years old, and then Australia, so a vast difference. And then my teenage years in Southwest Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains, and then marrying a guy from Pittsburgh, and then moving back to North Carolina. So I think it gave me a wide range of stories. My story changed so much and so dramatically. And then all the different people that you've known. You don't write about those people, but the different characters and the different stories So I guess it just fills you up. Maybe it fills your imagination up, and you just have more imagination to spill over.
Well, when did you realize you were a writer? Like, was that always in you, even as a kid? Were you writing?
I think from the time I read Laura Ingalls Wilder, at whatever age that was, 7 or 8 years old, and she kept in her books at least, she writes of how she had her little journal, and now she can tell about what life was like for her as a girl, and it's changed so much, in the meantime, that was inspiring. And I thought, wow, I should do that, but I never did keep a journal.
You never did keep the journal.
Never kept.
But
the
you always
journal.
kept that theme.
But I always liked writing. And I think I've always communicated better in writing than any other form of communication.
Now that really surprises me because I do know you somewhat, and I feel
Does that
like you're
surprise
a
you?
very good communicator as far as your feelings. You don't hide your feelings. You're just, it's out there. I mean, and I just think I know you well just by how you talk.
Well, thank you. And maybe I've just gotten better. I'm a little old now. But when I was younger, I felt like I miscommunicated a lot.
Really?
So I had a hard time getting people to understand what I wanted to say, or what I really meant, or what I really felt. And so when I would write, though, I could get it on the page.
Exactly as you wanted to say it.
And, going back, I mean, you just brought up something I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about, but the whole thing of having grown up in a different country, how that might have affected. So my friends, and one of the things I would have answered earlier about, Australia, what did you, it wasn't the marsupials or whatever, but your friends, which you call mates. And Australian mates are the real deal. And I mean, I still have close ones to this day, that we stay in contact with. Writing correspondence, written correspondence, this is before email and cell phones and all those things. So back and forth letters that took, 10 days to get across the oceans and back and forth. I mean, they were going on an airplane, but still it was slow. For years, back and forth. And so I suppose that's partially where maybe some of the writing started
You're
to
in
form.
essence sort of telling stories back and forth
Right.
because you're telling them what's going on in your life now, and they're
Yep.
telling you. So that's pretty interesting. It's a neat thought.
It is neat. I mean, I've listened to her stories where you can go on Amazon and you can listen to the guy talking and telling the story. Is that from Amazon? That might be some other place. But you can listen to your Amish stories and then decide if you want to buy the book. But tell us a little bit about your writing, because that's kind of
That's
one of
cool.
the...
I didn't know you could do that. So
Yeah.
how neat.
Yeah, you can listen and say, well, I don't want that book. But I still remember some of those because I've listened to 2 or 3. But they'll give you a little preview of the book. But tell us how you got into all that, the writing.
You helped me.
I don't
I
remember
didn't
that.
know. Yeah, you don't remember. You probably don't know. So we, David had just finished his, his first or second master's degree. And he said, it's your turn. You've supported me through all this, and it's your turn. I was working as a nurse at the time, but I had 2 very small children and was working I keep almost looking over at him.
To make sure.
Yeah, I was working night shift to, so we didn't have to pay for childcare. We worked it out that way. And so the idea, I hope I don't take too long. We'll have to watch the timer
You're
here.
good, you're good.
But the first thing that came to mind, of course, was, go back to school and, further your nursing degree. He's like, maybe you want to do the nursing practitioner or whatever. That was a financially appealing idea. And so I started thinking about it. And I hadn't been in college for a good long time at that point in time. I don't want to give away my age, but I'm 51. And so I enrolled at Forsyth Tech just to take some classes and update some things. And my professors there, they were all humanities classes. We're kind of like nursing, really. And so it made me start thinking. And then I actually was sitting in on your counseling classes at Piedmont at the time. And so I don't know what you said or whatever, but anyway, all of that has you digging deep down into yourself and thinking things through. And I was sitting at my little desk working the night shift one night and, praying about it. And I don't know if it was your voice in my head. You know how you ask questions and then you answer them back and forth. I know that sounds weird, but or what it was, but you know, I felt like that the Lord prompted me. What is it you want? What do you want? What do you really want? And the answer was really easy. I didn't want to keep being a nurse. I wanted to write. I wanted to do what I originally wanted to do when I went to college, my first semester of college. And I won't go into how I got discouraged from that track, but I had gotten discouraged from that track, and I think the Lord opened up a whole different path for a reason. But that's what I want. If you ask me, what do you want? God, if you're asking me what I want, that's what I want. And I felt in my spirit that he was like, I'll give it to you. Go for it. And my husband said, that's what you want, we'll do it. And it wasn't a financially wise idea at the time, for sure, but he supported me, and God started opening up the paths, opening up doors, and actually you helped me go to my first conference. And so it started to snowball from there.
It's incredible. I like the thing I like about your life is maybe growing up in a missionary home made you not want to go after money. And so as a result of, because you guys were broke, basically
we were
growing up,
poor at the time.
and but not only that, but you chose to follow your passion versus follow your career, because you could have done very well. You did well at nursing, and then you backed it off to kind of part-time, I guess, and you were still making good money, but something inside you just wasn't there. The passion wasn't there. And that's one thing I've always sensed, is just that passion to pursue that. And even when you talk about your stories, you're very passionate. So I'm sure that's part of what comes out of you in your writing, is that passion. But I'm, so glad you followed that, as opposed to, well, we got to be secure. Because you guys have been broke, basically, and everything. It seems like you guys get these, I hate to say it that way, but it's like all these obstacles that have been in your life, but you still pushed right through for your passions.
It's got to take an incredible amount of faith, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it takes faith, but I can tell you it's not blind faith, in the sense that there's been so much evidence that God is with me and with us in the choices that we make. I mean, right away, what kind of happened next was I decided to take an English class, and my professor just happened to be the head of the department, the English department at Forsyth Tech. And she said to me, you need to pursue publication. And I was like, how? I don't know how to do that. And so she pointed me in, some direction. She said, you've just got to do it. And I didn't know how much to believe her. Like, is she just being nice? And so she said, I'm not being nice. I wouldn't tell you this if I didn't really think it's something you want to do. And going back to what derailed me was my first college English professor, who laughed in my face and belittled my writing and said, yeah, whatever, you don't have what it takes. And so it was like a God turning that around. And but anyway, so I had no idea what I was doing or how to do it, but God opened up the steps, and I kept taking them, and all of them just kept leading. And the first, not too long after that, I entered a short story contest that Karen Kingsbury was doing. Some of you might know that, she's a pretty well-known Christian author. And I placed in it, and so there were just those little things where God said, keep going. So yet there was a lot of obstacles. Everything doesn't go smooth, but there were always at the right times these indications from the Lord that I'm with you, I'm behind you. And then when I couldn't see them, my husband could see them. And I'd say, we've put an awful lot of money in this, and I just, maybe this was a really bad idea. And he would say, I don't think so. I think we're doing what we're supposed to do. Just keep doing it. And, we didn't know cancer was coming, but it did. And this has filled the gap for us financially over the past couple of years.
Wow.
And it's continuing to.
So in the last episode, we talked a little bit to David about his battle with cancer. What was that like for you, having been a nurse, having new dreams to be a writer, and now becoming a caretaker?
Well, I didn't want to become a nurse. I kind of made that clear, but that wasn't my plan. My plan was I wanted to be an English teacher and a writer, and then I ended up becoming a nurse. I was 31 when we got married. Nursing paid the bills before I got married, and I enjoyed it. God knew apparently that it was a skill set that I had, and I did enjoy it while I was doing it. It just wasn't my passion, like you said, but it was something that I could be passionate about while it was what I was meant to be doing, if that makes any sense. That has been worth, I don't even know how to say what that's been worth over the past couple of years going through cancer. So I don't really know how I would have been able to do what we've done if I didn't have that background, didn't have that training. It's made a big difference.
And it's hard for you to illustrate that. Let me put it in a short illustration. Literally, he's getting treatment. He's not responding to the treatment. Something in your head clicks, and you make a connection with the Bar Epstein and the cancer treatment and pursue with the doctor a protocol that he wouldn't even put you on. But because you pushed, researched it, probably drove the whole house crazy trying to go on, trying to figure everything out. But you kind of made some connections there that were just amazing. So can you describe that connection?
Okay, so what you're talking about is a medication that he's currently on. So he's been through almost 2 years of chemo and radiation off and on, and but the underlying cause of his cancer, which is a rare cancer, is the Epstein-Barr virus, which is what you're talking about. And there isn't any way to treat the Epstein-Barr virus. Sort of like chicken pox. You get chicken pox, it lays dormant in your system. You get to my age, and you get shingles, right? The Epstein-Barr, which could give you mono when you're a kid, or you could just have it and not even know because you didn't get it that violently or that badly. And but 98% of the population has Epstein-Barr virus, and I'm not trying to scare anybody. We have it. That's how rare it is, though, that it turns out to be that it causes cancer, but it does cause other things, MS being one, other things. So basically it boils down to if you can't control the virus, you can't control the cancer. But there wasn't any medication to control the virus, so I just started researching and found somebody in Austria had decided to try a drug that's been around since the 1980s to treat hepatitis B and HIV, decided to try that medication against Epstein-Barr, and it worked, but it's only been done in a lab, in a Petri dish. I sent the studies to our doctor. She was like, oh, that is interesting. She talked to infectious disease, who are the ones that use that medication and are familiar with it, and they said, it's worth a try, but you have to wait till after treatments because it'll be too hard on the kidneys. So as soon as treatments were done, they got us started on it. God opened all those doors. God put the article up when I typed it into Google. But he also gave me the background to be able to figure out what to type into Google, to be able to think it through.
That's what I think is amazing is some doctor and some organization is going to get all the credit for this, and they're going to take your field trial, and it's going to start spreading about how to treat.
I sure hope so. I mean, I hope people.
You don't have any qualms about that, but I also know you're not going to make any money on it either.
No, I'm not going to make any money on it, but I hope that it will happen. There's no guarantee that will happen. So it's working right now. It is keeping the
cancer in check.
Yeah, it's keeping the virus almost at nothing. Sometimes at nothing, sometimes a little bit, but it's keeping it in check. But here's the thing, what if nobody does pay attention? What if people don't find out and they don't know? So, I pray that they do and that it helps a lot of people.
That's really neat. I love it.
Because this isn't a clinical trial. This isn't on stage or anything. It's just one little person over here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, at a little Novant, cancer center. And, so here,
But again, it comes back to the passion. There's no doctor actually trying to figure out other alternative ways or trying to evaluate this. You're sitting there at a little computer with your husband over here sick.
Right.
And you're the passion behind doing that. And I see that in people when they get things like this, the sickness, and they just have this passion to pursue the research. And you're right. I think all the giftings of God set you up for that moment to be able to pursue that, and then even suggest it to the doctors. Yeah, let's give it a try. It's like...
Well, I think, God gives us passions for whatever reason, and he pulls everything together, I mean, if I hadn't had a son with autism spectrum disorder and hadn't had to learn that, hey, nobody cares like you care. Nobody's the expert more than you're the expert on your child. And I had to learn that. If I hadn't learned that, I'm not the expert on cancer, but I'm the expert on my husband. I'm the one with the passion for my husband that's going to pursue things. And so, and same with writing or whatever,
That's what comes through
I
in your life.
do get passionate,
Yes.
and you're making me speak passionately, and I've kind of learned not to, honestly, because sometimes when you're passionate, it scares people,
That's good. That's a good thought.
And so, but
Yeah, like she's a little bit too
she's
extreme.
she's a little intense, but yeah.
But I like that about you because I always see that come through, whether it's with your home situation, whether it was with your writing, or just even not following a very secure path of nursing. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think that was deeply in you in the same way that writing would have been.
If I had said that was what I wanted, I think God would have given me that. But it wasn't. It wasn't what he put in me. And he gave me the desires of my heart.
It's good. I like it. You got a
So
thought?
tell us. Well, I want to talk a little bit about what inspires your stories, and tell us a little bit about how the first book was published.
So, what inspires my stories?
Where did you get the idea from for your first book?
Oh, so the Amish. I guess we're gonna move
always
on.
wanted to
We're
know
gonna
that.
move on to the Amish. So
Do you have something else you want to say about the other stuff? Okay,
no,
go ahead.
it's good. So, I lived and worked with an Amish family for 7 years. So there is, not coincidentally, a 7-year age difference between me and my husband. I'm 7 years older than him. And in the 7 years I was waiting for him, I didn't know he existed, but in the 7 years I was waiting for him, I was sequestered in an Amish community. And but God knew, right? He's like, hey, this boy's got to grow up first. So I'm sort of joking and sort of not. So those 7 years that I wasn't really interested in nursing, I think, as I've told you. And I started nursing school, and I started working for a beachy Amish family who are not as strict as the horse and buggy, no electricity kind of Amish that people think of. But they had a ministry where they had 2 different nursing homes, and not like any nursing home you've ever been in. I mean, it really was a ministry, and I lived there, not in the nursing home, but in an apartment on the premises, and worked there for those 7 years while also, and they paid for my nursing school, actually. So that was where my familiarity with them came from. And this is in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, not Lancaster. And so there's a heavy Mennonite influence as well. Of course, there is in Lancaster as well. But anyway, so that was my.
But like for me, I was raised in the Lancaster area, Philly.
That's right.
And so I have no interest in the Amish people, even though we would go to their things. We worked with them sometimes, and they were incredible craftsmen because I remember working with them. Mm-hmm. But what really drew you into that?
Well, what drew me into that was the need for a job, and the need for a job that I was more passionate about, as you said. It was a ministry.
But did you see something in their character that drew you? Like, was it an honest character, an open? They live such simple lives.
Well, no, I mean, it didn't draw me in the beginning. Like I said, I needed a job, and that's what drew me. And it was a job, and it was ministry at the same time, and it would help me with my, nursing. So that's what drew me. But what happened was that these people became my family and my friends, and it wasn't the easiest time of my life by any stretch of the imagination. It was actually a very difficult period of my life, and not all of it was rosy, but God grew me up in those years, and so there's a lot down in here to dwell, to come up from that. Now, that's good for emotion and for writing and all of that, but why write about them? I think it may be partly what you're asking, and I didn't have any desire to write about them at all. However, some editors suggested that I write about them, and I had to think about that pretty long and hard, and I actually had to research the genre because it's not something, sorry to say, that I actually read, and all of that. And in doing so, my question was, God, can you use what you've put in me through this kind of storytelling? And the answer was yes. And so that's what I've been doing.
Okay. So, and you basically, you write like Christian romance novels.
Right.
And your editors knew you had a background with the Amish. Is that why they suggested that, or where did that come from?
I'm not sure. Editors want Amish because it sells.
Okay.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Is it almost like the Little House on the Prairie concept of just a time in our past where?
Right. I think it is. I think that
nostalgic and sentimental.
It's nostalgic, but I think people long for a simpler time, a simpler way. Yes, it's a romanticized idea of Amish life, maybe, that people want, but at the same time, at least for me, how do I say this? Sometimes I say and think, and I still feel this way, thank God for the Amish. And I'll tell you why. Do I not know that there are Amish who are not good people? Yes. Do I not know that there are abuses that happen among the Amish? Yes. Do we not all know that those happen among all people? Yes. But what the Amish have done for 450, almost 500 years, since the mid-1600s, is that they have kept the faith. So they have maintained, some of them better than others, and obviously in some ways they've gotten away from it. But the Anabaptist faith that actually we're descended from ourselves, and they've kept it in a way separate from the world. So whether I or anyone agrees with that altogether, the fact is that they're this little tiny picture, I think, of where we came from. And so I've tried to pull from that, in my first series, making a community that is striving, where the minister and the bishop are striving to get back to their roots, not where so many Amish over the years came to a place where salvation was very works-oriented, where the congregation weren't even allowed to read their Bibles at home, those kinds of things. So there's been a strain from that. But I think there have been revivals among the Amish, and so what I strove to write was the story of a community where they're trying to get back to the basics of their faith. And so, yeah.
So your first book was entitled, what's the name of it?
So in 2016, right when I was trying to figure out about how I was going to write an Amish book, if somebody wanted an Amish book, because they did, I typed into Google. Google is my friend. I typed into Google Canadian Amish, and they popped up, and up popped this couple in a buggy flying down the roads of Prince Edward Island. So in 2016, the Amish from Ontario had just moved to Prince Edward Island. So it was a brand new idea, a brand new thing. They could get, the farmland was cheaper. The government of Prince Edward Island was welcoming them because they would have good practices so far as the land goes and all of that. And so it was a brand new thing, and so that just sent my imagination wild. So my first series was the Amish Dreams on Prince Edward Island. You can Google that. You can punch that into Amazon, Amish Dreams on Prince Edward Island, and all the books will come up. And yeah, so it took off from there.
That's amazing.
So it's
So
2016.
the first book is an Amish Forever Home. So I have a little girl who needs a foster child who needs a family. You know, the whole Anne of Green Gables kind of idea.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
Same
she
island.
but she
The
ends
same
up-
island, wasn't it?
Yeah, same island, but she ends up with an Amish.
You know, it's
family.
so amazing just to listen to you talk, because there's something very wholesome about what you're just describing, something very moral. Whereas you look at what the culture does is they want to counter that, and they want to go to make a show about breaking Amish and trying to highlight the people who broke out of the Amish people and were bad people, in a sense, if you've ever seen that
Right,
TV
right,
show.
yeah, of
And so it's like, it just doesn't fit with a healthy kind of wholesome approach. It probably sells shows, but yours seems to just
Sure.
have a
But you're
wholesome.
selling
It
books. I
sells
mean, you're doing
shows,
really
and
well.
and it sells books, and all kinds of things sell. Probably better than writing wholesome things, although that sells too. But yeah, if you're gonna, but that's not what I'm passionate about. Yeah. I'm not passionate about.
But you're selling, like what you're writing is doing pretty well.
Yeah, it's selling what's actually paying the bills at the moment isn't. Well, it's not paying the bills, it's just helping. But anyway, is that led me to bigger publishing contracts with bigger publishers.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm working on now. But that was the beginning.
One thing we've determined about you is you're passionate. Whatever you do with your
Everybody's
life.
going to be tired of hearing the word passion, but
And
I
creative,
am a
though.
romance author, so
He says passionate, but I'm thinking of creative. I mean, even in
Yeah.
the way you helped your husband and the way you have dealt with
Yes.
certain things in life, and then of course your books. I mean, I think there's a lot of creativity demonstrated there.
yeah, I think it's a real blessing to be able to use that part of yourself, and to be able to do what you enjoy. But nursing is not just a science either, and I learned that really fast. Yeah, you better know the science part, but when you're working with people, it's not just science, and so
You see people's hearts, the struggles, all those kind of things
Right.
that they go through, and you get attached to that.
right.
As opposed to a doctor who could maybe keep the distance and not feel that because they're not there day in and day out like a nurse is. And so it calls forth a different person. Well, I didn't realize we used up so much time talking
Well,
about her passion.
I want you to tell us though real quickly. She was just telling me a couple weeks ago around Valentine's that some of your books are reissued and available. So where can our listeners go to find your books and buy your books, and what do you recommend maybe, and what are you working on next?
Well, for the first series, the best place to go is to go to Amazon. And in republishing them myself, I just went straight through Amazon. So like I said, you can type in Amy Grochowski, or you can type in Amish Dreams on Prince Edward Island, or and that'll come up on Amazon. At the end of July, you'll be able to go to Walmart and buy my next book from Love Inspired.
That's cool.
So that book is coming out, and that's those books. The books that are going to be coming out from Love Inspired are set in the Virginia mountains, so they go back to the heart of.
And if it makes it to Walmart, you're a hit.
Well, I mean.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It's
because
a big
people are
blessing
reading
from
that
God.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big
very
blessing
cool.
from God. So
It is cool.
So that you could go to Walmart. That you could find anywhere. That'll be wide. I did write one book in the meantime that you just can't get. So I feel it paid. That contract was for a book club. So it's very exclusive just to that book club. But I wrote that book while David was getting chemotherapy the first time. I got the contract, which was another God thing. We won't, our sands of time have ended. But that was another God thing, getting that contract. And the amount that I got from that paid exactly the amount of his lost wages for the end of that year.
Wow.
And so that book's not really out there available, but it was a big deal for me.
Yeah, that's
cool.
great. That's very good. Well, it was great having you with us today. We'll have to have you back sometime and talk about some of your other books once they get out. So that was pretty fun. If you'd like more information about that, you can visit our podcast page on our website, tbcnow.org. And thank you for being here. I think that was great. If you missed the episode with her husband that we did a couple of weeks ago with David, go back and listen to that, and you'll hear more about his journey with cancer and how the Lord's working in his life and his heart right now. So if you like this episode, like it and share it and let us know. Hope you have a great week.
Thanks for joining us this week on TBC Today. We want to connect with you, so make sure to visit our website, tbcnow.org, and subscribe, rate, and review the show in iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and be on the lookout for our next conversation.